And for today's Windows on Wednesday, presented to you by... What? That's right, you're basically getting a Windows on Wednesday video and a MARCHintosh video all in one. It's what us content creators call manipulating the algorithm. Optimizing it. So last week I showed off the Mac Pro 2.1 that I had kind of refurbished, cleaned it up, replaced thermal paste, repaired a battery holder, etc. And I said I might try to get Windows on here just to see if it'll work. And it does, but I will be honest with you, it was a huge, huge pain in the butt trying to get it working. In fact, I had to go through 4 different burned disks in order to get a working copy, and that's because of the fact that early on when when Apple introduced the whole boot camp concept, they were basically emulating a more traditional PC BIOS rather than just telling Windows to use EFI, and that's mainly because of the fact that Windows XP didn't really support EFI. EFI support didn't really show up until Vista and Windows 7. You could kind of get it to work with XP, but there were a lot of workarounds, and they wanted to make it as easy as possible. But of course, that complicates things when it comes to operating systems like Windows 10 in this case, which heavily relies on EFI, although again, it will still run on a more traditional BIOS and a traditional MBR-based disk as opposed to a GPT-based disk. So won't get to any more technical details like that because there's tons of guides on the internet. I'll even include some links below of all the resources that I went through. But suffice to say, it took me about 2 days to finally find a solution that worked. And yeah, I don't want to ever go through that again. So anyway, it's running Windows 10, a 64-bit version, and it has the latest updates and everything on there because as of this recording, Windows 10 is still officially supported by Microsoft. In fact, I believe support ends October 14th, 2025, which is the last patch Tuesday for Windows 10. But yeah, it still works. It's still supported. It runs pretty well on here, actually. And it's supported still, so you can still use it as a daily driver. And there's probably ways even to get Windows 11 running on here to get a little bit more life out of it. So yeah, if you've got one of these, it will still run. You can still use it. You can still use it with Mac OS. Let's be honest. Some applications will still run on it, but websites will have trouble loading because of SSL authentication and handshake issues and all that. Yeah, you're not going to have any security updates, of course, and the only way to really truly browse the web is to use third-party open source forks of like Chromium and Firefox, and even those aren't, perfect. So at least with Windows on there, you'll get a lot more use out of it because any software that runs on Windows 10 should, in theory, also run on here. But I also managed to get some games on here as well. But first, you can see web browsing is working, and yeah, this is a MARCHintosh page. It's a little more basic, but YouTube does work on here pretty well. I ran a quick video or 2 on here. Let me see if I can find... I don't have any audio because the speakers aren't turned on right now. I can turn them on, but they're quiet anyway. So, turn on stats for nerds. We are running at 1080p. Currently, that's what YouTube auto set it to. And as you can see, 0 dropped frames, which is amazing. Now, let me go ahead and change these settings to 4K. I'll let it buffer a little bit. And again, the display itself is still 1080p. But as you can see, we are dropping quite a bit of frames over here. So it's catching up a little bit. So it can barely do 4K. I'd be willing to bet if I had a better graphics card in here, it'd probably do a little bit better. If I had a little bit more RAM, maybe even. But it runs pretty well. Like I said, 1080p though, no real issues. Let's see, 720p. 0 drop frames, whereas in Mac OS, we were getting a lot of drop frames. One of you left a comment had to do with graphics card not being fully supported, and instead of trying Chromium, try to use, I think it was Firefox Dynasty. Unfortunately, the Firefox Dynasty does not run in 10.7 yet. There is plans to get it working. I think 10.8 and newer, it runs pretty well. So maybe one day I'll give that a shot. But you can still play YouTube videos at maximum, I would say 1080p. I wouldn't go higher than that, honestly. 1080p 60, that is. So yeah, so that's going there. Like I said, I also was able to get Windows Update running, no problem. I don't have Windows activated because I don't want to waste a key on here. I don't have any spare keys, unfortunately, for Windows 10 anymore. And the old, using a Windows 7 key, which I have plenty of, the activation trick doesn't work anymore because Microsoft shut down that little loophole, although they probably should have shut that down a long time ago. And also, if you notice on the desktop, I've got a couple of games installed. One is Quake 4, which came out, I believe, a year before this particular Mac came out. And then I also have BioShock Remastered, not the original one. So I could probably put more games on here, but 2 are going to be enough. There are no official benchmarks that I can run through either game that I've been able to find. I believe Quake 4 does have a timed demo available that you can kind of create your own little custom demo out of. Not really good with that or anything, but I can say that the games do run. And I'll see if I can get a closer shot of the screen here because I don't have a video capture set up right now. First, we're going to start with Quake 4. I'm not sure why it has to run as administrator, but apparently it does. So be it. This is the GOG version. I do have an actual license to use it. I have the actual copy and everything. What's nice about GOG is that you can just take your installations and move them from computer to computer without needing to be signed in or anything like that. Basically, they're unlocked forever. So and everything is stretched out because the menus don't officially support widescreen, but the video settings do. And yeah, high quality, I got it to 1080p, 16:9, etc., etc. Otherwise, everything is default. Do I have a game save? I do. Now, this game originally came out in, 2006, I believe, so it should have no trouble running on here, even with the with the pretty mediocre ATI card that's in there right now. So even on an SSD, though, it takes a little bit to load. And as you can see, I'm at the intro, basically. Can I skip it, though? Yes, I can. All right, I wanted to restart the game because I wanted to see if I can enable the FPS counter. Not sure if I'll be able to, but we'll see if the commands worked or not. Okay, there we go. Now I've got it. I had to edit the config file instead of adding a flag to the executable. So let's go back in. Seems to be a little crazy, but at least it's showing up now. 2 frames per second. Neat. Is it frozen? Oh, I was going to say, is it frozen? Now, I am not an expert at this game at all. I am not great at first-person shooters, so any gameplay anomalies that you see are 100% my fault. But as you can see, we're getting, I'm going to say between 30 and 60 altogether. I don't even know where to go. And there's some clipping and stuff, but it looks good overall. And if there aren't a whole lot of things going on screen, I can get 60 frames, if not a little more. How do I open the door? Maybe I can't. But you get the point here. I wonder if I can go and adjust some of the settings now. I don't even think I have that much memory. Let's set it to medium. Sure. And then we'll restart. And even the menus are kind of lower quality right now. I think I'm still running at 1080p though. Looks like we're getting a consistent 62.5 frames per second at medium quality. So Quake 4 seems to run okay over here. Can I go in this door now? I don't think I can. Can I go this way? Again, it's probably even the first time that I've played this game, so... Hey, there we go. Still getting roughly 60 frames per second. But yeah, still a little bit of clipping, but frame rate seems to be really consistent. So yeah, let's go ahead and we'll switch to BioShock next. Now, this does take a minute to load. It's got a lot of assets and everything. And even though it's running off of, like I said, an SSD, it still takes some time. So we'll rejoin the game in action. And we've got the FPS counter in the upper left corner. That's through Fraps. I don't think BioShock has its own mechanism for it. So this is not the Steam version, so I can't even run like a benchmark or anything. I did already start it earlier, just so we wouldn't have to go through the entire intro or anything like that. Although I'm not very far in the game. And again, it's another game that I'm not great at, so... Even the loading screens take a minute or two to load up, so... Alright, here we are. I am in this corridor that I have absolutely no idea how to get through. Apparently I can just walk right through them. Well, I could. As you can see, we're getting roughly 30 frames per second. Now, the only reason I'm getting even 30 frames per second is because of the fact that I had to drop this down to 768, so just a little bit more than 720p. Anisotropic filter down to 2x, field of view down to 85. I left that default windowed mode. I turned off, and everything else is off. It wouldn't even launch if I had it at 1080p. And yeah, so if you're going to try to play anything from like 2016, which is what this remaster, which is when the remaster was released, you're going to probably have to drop everything down. But as you can see, I am, like I said, getting roughly 30 frames per second. Something hit me, or is that just... Mattress folded in half. Sure, we'll pick one of those up. Why not? And yeah, so it's playable. And when there's not a lot of action going on, as you can see, the frames per second go up to pretty much 60. So now I can't sit there and tell you if... I don't know if this is even available on Mac or not, but I don't know if I could play like that or not. Will you die already? See, like I said, not an expert at this game, so... Can I just pick up the pipe? And I guess not. I'd rather have a pipe than the wrench, but, you know, whatever. So, yeah, again, I'm not going to embarrass myself any further. Let's move on. All right, and let's go over the benchmarks now. It's basically just Geekbench 3 and 6. I ran 3 to try to give it a comparison with the Mac OS scores, which I'll go into in a bit, and I ran 6 just for good measure. So Geekbench 3, which I'll show on screen here. 1517 single core, 9230 multi-core. And then if we look at the Mac version, which is just one that I pulled from their site because, again, I could not run it due to SSL issues, 1523 and 10535 multi-score. Now, I'm not sure why those scores are higher because their Mac Pro 2.1 is only running at 2.66 gigahertz, though it is running in Mac OS 10.11. So it's possible that there's some optimizations there that just allow it to run better. So, and then, of course, I told you I'd show you Geekbench 6. These are what the scores are for Windows 10. Single is 331, multi is 1377. The other thing that I did when I ran BioShock is I wanted to see the temperatures and everything. There's your CPU temps right there. 72 degrees Celsius, minimum was 67, max 77. Memory ran at about 82.5. And I will tell you this, I did attempt to touch the heat sinks on them and almost burnt myself. That's how hot they were. The graphics card was running at about 80 degrees Celsius. When I went back, I could feel heat coming out of the system, and I grazed my finger across the I/O plate on the video card, and it too was very, very hot to the touch. So after running the game, CPU cooled down quite a bit. GPU did as well. Memory still stayed kind of hot. I don't know if that's a concern or not. They do have giant heat sinks on them. And then I repasted the graphics card, and it was still kind of hot after it, but I had just run it just after the game. I didn't give it like any time or anything like that. But the memory, the memory did go down this time, down to about 68.5, so it's a little bit better. Still kind of concerning though. We also have here, I ran MS Info just so you could see all the specs and everything, and I also wanted to verify BIOS mode, which was in fact legacy, so your typical BIOS and not EFI or anything like that. So yeah, again, not a screamer. It is older though, of course. I just wish that I could have run the Geekbench under a 10.7 to give it a little bit more of an accurate representation. However, I do have this Sapphire HD 7970. Now, it's a PC version, so it's not going to show up until the operating system boots up, but I'm hoping we can get it to work. It should work, and it is going to be a lot more powerful, hopefully, than what we currently have in here. So we're going to go ahead and I'm going to shut it down and install it. And for those wondering about the power connectors here, I did find some cheap ones online. I'm hoping cheap in this case does not mean, bad, but we'll see. And apparently they come 2 in a package. I ordered 2 of them. Oops. Well, I guess I could keep one as a spare just in case. But we're going to go ahead. I'll get this installed and we'll see if we can improve some of these scores a little bit. I might have to remove the fan assembly to get to these. So I managed to get them in there without removing the front fan assembly, but I recommend just doing it because it'll be a lot easier. And now the graphics card itself. Oh, forgot to remove this plate out of the way. Getting it to line up is going to be a struggle, but I think I've got it. Go ahead and secure it with some screws. Completely mismatched screws at that. I could probably flash this to work with the Mac specifically, but I don't know if there's going to be a point. And again, it's not like I'm going to use this on anything else but the Mac, so how do I remove the extra? Or can I remove the extra 6 pins? I don't think that I can, but I think that's all right because I should be able to. Oh, they've got this connector set up. Interesting. We didn't realize, but the connector is kind of solid right there. I can get into the 8 pin, but how am I going to get it into the 4 pin? Or 6 pin, I should say. It doesn't look like it breaks away or anything like that. I think that's as good as I'm going to get it, but it is in all the way. Not going to be able to latch it, of course, but I think it'll do. And if not, it'll blow up on me. I'm going to leave this side panel off just in case, but everything's hooked up. Hopefully we'll hear a bong, and then I have to hopefully time the key presses so that I can select Windows and boot into Windows. Here goes nothing. Fans are spinning. Do we get a bong? All right, so I hit right once and enter. Of course, no display. Oh, did I select the right option? Yes. Okay, cool. Windows will probably need to install drivers, of course. If the cart's working. Fairly silent. Oh. That's not a good sign. Is the card drawing too much power? Or is Windows blue screening? We're here. Drivers aren't installed, obviously, but oops. For some reason, numlock wasn't on either. Really? You don't know what a 7970 is, but you had absolutely no problem figuring out that the younger sibling was in there. Let me get these installed. That's not going to take care of the video issue, but all right. And I ended up just installing the full AMD driver. Well, it's a legacy driver, but at least this way I know everything is installed correctly. And just to verify here, 7900 series. Cool. So let me go ahead and I will rerun Geekbench. I don't think it'll make a difference, but I'll rerun it anyway. And we'll quick game of Quake and Bioshock, just see if there's any improvements there. And hopefully wrap this video up because it's been going on for a while. And here are the scores. 1526. Really? 15. Oh my god. See, this is why I hate installing all this extra software and stuff that's almost now required for these modern graphics cards. When I say modern, even 10 years ago. Anyway, single score 1526, multi 10634. So there is an improvement there. We look at the old numbers here. $1517 and $9230. So yeah, nice little jump. Now let's see what games look like. First, let me just verify the settings again. Let's do ultra quality. Let's see if we can't do 1080p again. And I think everything else should be fine. You know, let's turn the brightness up a little bit. You know what? Yes, we're going to force that. VSync, sure. Anti-aliasing. Yeah, let's turn it on too. Multi-CPU core. Yeah, that should help a lot. And then we'll just quit and restart. All right, let's go ahead and load a game. Sure, why not? Okay, a little bit lighter than I was expecting. A little bit of artifacting too. That could just be, actually, it's not really artifacting. It's just, I don't even know what to describe it. But we're still getting 60 frames per second, even at 1080p. So that's a good sign. I could probably send the turn to gamma down a little bit, but makes it easier to play. Yeah, so there's that. Let's just exit here. And then we'll do BioShock next. Let me just get Fraps set up. I'm going to load up BioShock Remastered here. Going to take a minute for it to load. And again, we'll adjust some of the graphics settings. I'm going to see how high I can take it. We've got it set for 768. Let's take that back up to 1080. Actually, let's, there's no option here just to reset defaults. But if you look at the frames per second counter, it's going crazy. We're just in menus though. Let's set this back up to 100. That's fine. We'll turn that on. Yes. Let's continue. And this will take a minute to load, so we'll be right back. And we are running at 1080p, and it looks like 60 frames per second. I wasn't even able to get it to launch if I had it set to 1080p. So, and it's a smooth 60. I wish that I had a copy of Shadow the Tomb Raider on GOG instead of one of the other stores. So that I could just copy it over and not have to install Steam or whatever I have it on and go through all that process. I wonder if there's a demo I can download. But yeah, 60 frames per second, everything's nice and smooth. No real issues. So, cool. Oh, I forgot to search this guide, didn't we? Cool. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and we'll just quit out of here. Let's wrap this thing up. So yeah, I'm kind of impressed. It works actually a lot better than I was expecting it to, especially since I was able to get Windows 10 on here and run more modern stuff. But of course, that's part of the problem here is that Windows 10 support ends this October 14th, I believe, which is a patch Tuesday. And again, as I said before, Windows 10 will still continue to run, but as time goes on, security vulnerabilities come out, bugs, things like that. And at some point, software will just stop running. Mac OS 10.7, really not supported anymore by anybody. You can run older software, sure, but you're going to be limited to that older software. And if you want to do, third-party workarounds, Open Core Legacy patch or DOS Dudes patches to get El Capitan on here, you can. And that'll give you a little bit more of a bump. But you're still not going to get any updates from Apple, security fixes, things like that. And at some point, software will stop running too. In fact, I think TurboTax won't even run on anything that's older than Mac OS 13 now. So, and the only reason I brought that up is because I just recently did my taxes. And I remember last year I had to Open Core Legacy Patcher on my MacBook to get it to be able to install a supported operating system. So, but if you just want something to tinker around with, something for your collection, it's not bad, And, installing Linux on here would probably give you even more life out of it. Again, you're limited by the hardware. You're going to be able to max it out, possibly to 64 gigs of RAM, although you probably wouldn't want to put more than 32 in here. Maybe even 16 is more than enough for most people. Having 4 hard drive bays is great because you can definitely put a ton of storage in here if you wanted to use this as a file server, though. With the amount of power that this thing requires and the amount of heat it generates, there's way more efficient ways to run a file server. But if you don't care about that, if you're keeping this in your basement or something like that, have at it, like I said, Windows 10 was a pain in the butt getting installed on here. I'll leave links below to all the research that I did. Hopefully you'll be able to get something working out of it too. Like I said, I had to basically customize the installer to remove certain boot options. And I didn't have to do much. I had to enter some flags in the command prompt and that's it. But still, that's the only way I could get Windows 10 on here. So do you guys have a Mac Pro 2.1? Do you have Windows on there? Do you have Linux on there? Did you find a way to get Windows 11 on here? I'm sure there's a way. Let me know down below. Otherwise, thanks. I'll catch you later.